Before you ever had a voice, they taught you pain. But what if the thing that was meant to destroy you was actually building you into something unbreakable? They handed you shame like a family heirloom and expected you to wear it forever. But broken things, they cut the deepest. This isn't a story about pain. This is a story about what pain awakened in you and why they should have never tried to bury you. Pain was the first language they ever taught you, long before you had the words to speak for yourself. Before you could even form a thought of your own, they handed you a script. A twisted script soaked in humiliation, betrayal, and silence. And they demanded that you perform it day after day until you forgot who you were. Every insult you swallowed like poison. Every scar they etched into your soul. Every mocking laugh that echoed in your chest long after they walked away. It was all part of the lesson, wasn't it? And you obeyed because you thought you had no other choice. You played the role, the obedient one, the quiet one. The one who never questioned, never fought back. But here's the truth they never saw coming. Pain doesn't just destroy. Pain instructs. It sharpens the edges of your soul. It tears away illusions. It forces you to see clearly, to feel deeply, to rise from the fire as something unrecognizable to those who tried to burn you. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. They tried to bury you under shame, but they didn't know they were planting something far more powerful, your rebirth. They thought pain would silence you forever. That betrayal would break your spirit, but all it did was train you. Now you carry a weapon they never expected, not rage, not revenge, but regret. Not yours, theirs, because the heaviest weight a cruel person can carry is the realization that their cruelty failed. That their control slipped through their fingers like sand. That the person they tried to crush has become a force they can no longer define or contain. This isn't about shouting. This isn't about fists or revenge fantasies. This is about you, thriving unapologetically out loud. Becoming the mirror of their failure. The life you live now, that is your answer. That is your power. So let me say this plainly. You owe them nothing. Not your kindness. Not your forgiveness, and absolutely not your silence. Yes, they taught you pain, but now you're going to teach them regret. They told you that being broken was the end, that shattered people were worthless, disposable, that every crack in your soul was proof you'd never rise again. But they misunderstood the most dangerous truth. Broken things can become weapons. Think of glass, smooth when whole, predictable, fragile, but once shattered, each shard becomes a razor, sharp enough to cut through anything it touches. That's what pain did to you. It didn't ruin you. It reshaped you. It made you unpredictable, sharper, stronger than they ever imagined. When you were broken, you gained something they never expected: resilience. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body," and that's exactly what happened. Pain chiseled lessons into your soul like a sculptor working stone. Every insult, a reminder that their words don't define you. Every betrayal, a lesson in trust. Every loss, a spark that ignited your self-worth. The world fears people like you because broken people, they see clearly. You've lived through illusions, and now you can smell a lie from a mile away. You are no longer fooled, no longer silent. No longer small, you are sharp, and you are free. You slice through lies, manipulation, and false intentions with the precision of someone who has nothing left to lose. Because you've already lost what mattered: your innocence, your illusions, your old self. And once you've stood in that darkness and survived it, there's no going back. But here's the critical truth. Being sharp is not the same as being bitter. This is where emotional intelligence reveals its power. Many people get stuck in anger. They confuse pain with purpose. They use their sharpness to lash out at the world, swinging wildly, cutting everything in sight. But that kind of pain is directionless. And directionless pain becomes self-destruction. You, if you are to live with Stoic strength, must do something far more difficult. You must learn to direct your sharpness with clarity and control, because an untempered blade cuts its wielder just as easily as it cuts its enemy. But with discipline, that same blade becomes an instrument of transformation. It doesn't destroy. It reveals. It trims away what no longer serves your peace. It shapes boundaries that are non-negotiable. This is where psychological strength is born. Before, anyone could walk into your life and decide your worth. Before, they could manipulate your silence, twist your kindness into weakness. But now your sharpness draws lines that no one crosses without consequence. You are not cruel. You are clear. You are not cold. You are disciplined. You have learned that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is survival. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. And that changes everything, because being broken taught you this truth. External cruelty can never define your internal value unless you allow it to. You're no longer a prisoner of their judgment. You're no longer a puppet dancing to the strings of their approval. You decide your worth. You decide what you will allow. And that decision alone makes you unbreakable. Just look at the arc of history, of philosophy, of human strength. The most resilient souls didn't come from comfort. They came from the fire, and they refused to be consumed. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of Auschwitz, once wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." And that's exactly what you did. They gave you pain, and you didn't just endure it, you transformed it. They shattered the mirror that once reflected who you were. But in the fragments, you discovered someone new, sharper, clearer, unstoppable. And now, here's the irony they never expected. They fear you. Yes, the very people who once mocked you, who laughed at your pain, who dismissed your silence as weakness. They now avoid your gaze. Why? Because broken people don't play by the same rules. You've seen the worst, and you're still here. Every scar you wear is no longer a wound. It is armor, proof, power. So never despise your brokenness. Never curse the moments you fell apart. Those were your initiation into strength. Without them, you would still be asleep, still chasing validation, still begging for crumbs of love that were never real to begin with. But now, you are awake. You are sharp. You are free, and never forget this. A shattered mirror doesn't reflect, it cuts. You, sharpened by pain, will no longer reflect the lies others tried to project onto you. You will cut through them, with truth, with discipline, with self-mastery. They thought breaking you would silence you, but in truth it gave you a voice you never had before. They thought it would leave you weak. Instead, it gave you clarity. They thought they were writing your ending. But all they did was hand you the blade to carve your own beginning. You were broken, yes. But broken things, when forged in fire and tempered by wisdom, become sharper than steel.
What if I told you that the way you spend the first 60 seconds after waking up could shape your entire day, even your entire life? Most people wake up already drowning in noise, notifications, problems, distractions. But what if you had the power to start with peace instead of pressure? The Stoics believed that every morning is a gift, a rare privilege. The question is, do you treat it that way, or do you throw it away the moment you open your eyes? The Stoic philosophers once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." That isn't just poetry, it's the foundation of life itself. Gratitude, they taught, isn't just a pleasant attitude. It's a weapon against entitlement, against anxiety, against the restless chaos that waits for you the second you step out of bed. Gratitude pulls you out of your head and drags you back into the present moment, into the only place where real life actually happens. But here's the problem. Most people don't do this. They roll out of bed and fall headfirst into autopilot, notifications, noise, mental clutter. They start reacting before they've even returned to themselves. And the truth is harsh. If you don't take control of your attention first thing in the morning, the world will gladly do it for you. Carl Jung once warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious. It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about that. If you wake up and let your mind run wild, stressing about deadlines, people, problems, you're not really living. You're surviving. Barely. Gratitude interrupts that destructive pattern. It anchors you before the storm of the day begins. Because let's be honest, most of us forget how rare and fragile this thing called life really is. We complain, we compare, we coast, but one unexpected event, a diagnosis, an accident, a sudden loss, can flip your entire world upside down in an instant. And when you finally grasp that nothing is guaranteed, gratitude stops being just a morning ritual. It becomes survival. It becomes strength. So when you wake up tomorrow, don't rush. Take 3 slow, steady breaths. Place your hand over your heart if you need to reconnect with your body, and whisper it, "I'm grateful to be here." Not to perform, not to impress, not to prove, just to be. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But maybe part of that examination isn't only about asking big philosophical questions. Maybe it's about practicing deep presence, about refusing to let life blur past you while you're distracted by everything that doesn't matter. You don't need a fancy journal or some flawless meditation routine. You need just one clean thought. This is enough. This moment is enough. And from that seed of enoughness, you begin to grow into someone who no longer needs chaos to feel alive. You approach your day with a different kind of strength. A quiet strength rooted in stillness, not speed. There's a huge difference between starting the day from pressure and starting it from purpose. One feels like drowning, the other feels like clarity, and that shift begins with intention. When you wake up with gratitude, you stop chasing peace all day long because you've already begun with it. Think of it like tuning your inner frequency. When you're tuned to appreciation, the little irritations of life, traffic, interruptions, delays, lose their power. They no longer control you because you're not reacting from emptiness. You're responding from wholeness. Even Aristotle spoke to this when he reminded us, happiness depends upon ourselves, not in a selfish way, but in the recognition that your inner world creates your outer one. So ask yourself, have you noticed how the very first moments after you wake up shape the entire tone of your day? Most people reach for their phone, check messages, or start worrying about tasks before they've even taken a conscious breath. But the way you speak to yourself each morning, that quiet inner dialogue, is powerful. It sets the tone for your energy, your mindset, and how you face the world. And here's the truth. Those fleeting seconds between sleep and action are the most vulnerable your mind will ever be. What you choose to feed it in that moment either strengthens your core or weakens it. Because here's the truth. If you're constantly waking up, stressed, overwhelmed, or just drifting aimlessly through the noise, you are not alone. But you do have a choice. And that's exactly where Stoicism enters. Not as some dusty, ancient philosophy buried in books, but as a practical daily tool for survival. The Stoics believed that the way you begin your morning is how you train your soul. If you don't anchor your mind, the world will anchor it for you. And trust me, the world already has its own agenda. So if you're tired of waking up feeling behind, if you're ready to stop letting yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's anxieties own today's peace, then listen closely. I want to share with you 5 simple phrases, daily truths, that you can repeat to yourself each morning. They take less than a minute, but the shift they create is profound. It's personal. It's power. And if what we're building here resonates with you, if it helps you pause, reflect, and move through life with a little more clarity, then consider being part of it. A subscription isn't just support for this channel. It's a signal to yourself and to others that you value growth that actually lasts. You know what's wild? We're always chasing something. Success, clarity, love, money, answers. Always running after the next milestone. Yet we rarely stop long enough to notice the one treasure we already have. This moment. And I don't mean the live in the now quote you scroll past on social media. I'm talking about the quiet, overlooked miracle of simply waking up, taking a breath, opening your eyes to an entirely unwritten day. A day you didn't earn, a day you weren't promised, but somehow you still received it. That's power, that's grace, and that's where real strength begins.
You are no longer fooled, no longer silent, no longer small, you are sharp. And you are free. You slice through lies, manipulation, and false intentions with the precision of someone who has nothing left to lose. Because you've already lost what mattered. Your innocence, your illusions, your old self. And once you've stood in that darkness and survived it, there's no going back. But here's the critical truth. Being sharp is not the same as being bitter. This is where emotional intelligence reveals its power. Many people get stuck in anger. They confuse pain with purpose. They use their sharpness to lash out at the world, swinging wildly, cutting everything in sight. But that kind of pain is directionless, and directionless pain becomes self-destruction. You, if you are to live with Stoic strength, must do something far more difficult. You must learn to direct your sharpness with clarity and control, because an untempered blade cuts its wielder just as easily as it cuts its enemy. But with discipline, that same blade becomes an instrument of transformation. It doesn't destroy, it reveals. It trims away what no longer serves your peace. It shapes boundaries that are non-negotiable. This is where psychological strength is born. Before anyone could walk into your life and decide your worth. Before they could manipulate your silence, twist your kindness into weakness, but now your sharpness draws lines that no one crosses without consequence. You are not cruel. You are clear. You are not cold. You are disciplined. You have learned that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is survival. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. And that changes everything, because being broken taught you this truth. External cruelty can never define your internal value, unless you allow it to. You're no longer a prisoner of their judgment. You're no longer a puppet dancing to the strings of their approval. You decide your worth. You decide what you will allow. And that decision alone makes you unbreakable. Just look at the arc of history of philosophy of human strength. The most resilient souls didn't come from comfort. They came from the fire and they refused to be consumed. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of Auschwitz, once wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." And that's exactly what you did. They gave you pain and you didn't just endure it. You transformed it. They shattered the mirror that once reflected who you were. But in the fragments you discovered someone new, sharper, clearer, unstoppable. And now, here's the irony they never expected. They fear you, yes. The very people who once mocked you, who laughed at your pain, who dismissed your silence as weakness. They now avoid your gaze. Why? Because broken people don't play by the same rules. You've seen the worst, and you're still here.
When you stop giving others what they never earned, you reclaim your peace. You see clearly that their expectations are not your responsibility. Their guilt is not your burden. Their need for control is not your problem to solve. Seneca once wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Isn't that exactly what you lived? You suffered under the weight of imagined debts, believing you owed them explanations, that you owed them access, that you owed them one last conversation. But the truth? The truth is cleaner, sharper, freeing. You don't owe them anything, and that clarity, that moment of realization, turns you from a prisoner into a sovereign. A sovereign does not beg. A sovereign does not live by borrowed rules. A sovereign does not explain their worth. A sovereign decides, and that decision carries weight. Not because of guilt, but because of discipline. Let me tell you something crucial. They thrived on your belief that you owed them. That belief was their grip on your life. It's how they kept control. By convincing you that you must explain yourself, that you must forgive them, that you must come back. But you don't. You never did. Their entitlement was always an illusion. Not your duty. This is where your self-worth awakens. And here's the truth it speaks. You are not measured by how much you can endure for others. You don't prove your strength by keeping toxic people in your life. You don't demonstrate compassion by handing out endless second chances. No, true self-worth is knowing exactly when to walk away, when to close the door, when to remind yourself firmly and without guilt, I owe them nothing. Now take a moment to think about silence. Most people see silence as surrender, but the Stoics saw something else entirely. Silence, when chosen with intention, is a weapon. It denies your enemies the very things they feed on, the drama they provoke, the reactions they crave, the control they're used to having. By giving them nothing, you give yourself everything, and that's the paradox they never anticipated. They thought they would control your story forever. But when you take back the pen, when you burn their script and write your own, they're left empty-handed. They can no longer burden you with false debts because you've severed the chain of obligation. That doesn't mean hatred. It doesn't mean bitterness. It simply means clarity. You don't have to hate them. You only have to remove their access to your soul. That is the quiet confidence of someone who has developed spiritual discipline. And let this be carved into your memory. You don't owe them forgiveness, because forgiveness is not a currency to be traded for someone else's freedom. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. When you're ready, you don't owe them explanations. Your healing is not a public debate. You don't owe them kindness, because kindness without boundaries is self-destruction. You owe them nothing. And in that nothing, you gain everything. Freedom, clarity, self-mastery, and peace. They thought your survival was meaningless. That waking up each day, breathing, existing, was just a sign you were broken, a ghost dragging yourself through life. But they were wrong. Survival is not weakness. Survival is defiance. Survival is rebellion. Think about it. When you stop giving others what they never earned, you reclaim your peace. You see clearly that their expectations are not your responsibility. Their guilt is not your burden. Their need for control is not your problem to solve. Seneca once wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Isn't that exactly what you lived? You suffered under the weight of imagined debts, believing you owed them explanations, that you owed them access, that you owed them one last conversation. But the truth is cleaner, sharper, freeing. You don't owe them anything, and that clarity, that moment of realization, turns you from a prisoner into a sovereign. A sovereign does not beg. A sovereign does not live by borrowed rules. A sovereign does not explain their worth. A sovereign decides, and that decision carries weight. Not because of guilt, but because of discipline. Let me tell you something crucial. They thrived on your belief that you owed them. That belief was their grip on your life. It's how they kept control. By convincing you that you must explain yourself, that you must forgive them, that you must come back. But you don't. You never did. Their entitlement was always an illusion. Not your duty. This is where your self-worth awakens. And here's the truth it speaks. You are not measured by how much you can endure for others. You don't prove your strength by keeping toxic people in your life. You don't demonstrate compassion by handing out endless second chances. No, true self-worth is knowing exactly when to walk away, when to close the door, when to remind yourself firmly and without guilt, I owe them nothing. Now take a moment to think about silence. Most people see silence as surrender, but the Stoics saw something else entirely. Silence, when chosen with intention, is a weapon. It denies your enemies the very things they feed on, the drama they provoke, the reactions they crave, the control they're used to having. By giving them nothing, you give yourself everything, and that's the paradox they never anticipated. They thought they would control your story forever. But when you take back the pen, when you burn their script and write your own, they're left empty-handed. They can no longer burden you with false debts because you've severed the chain of obligation. That doesn't mean hatred. It doesn't mean bitterness. It simply means clarity. You don't have to hate them. You only have to remove their access to your soul. That is the quiet confidence of someone who has developed spiritual discipline. And let this be carved into your memory. You don't owe them forgiveness, because forgiveness is not a currency to be traded for someone else's freedom. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. When you're ready, you don't owe them explanations. Your healing is not a public debate. You don't owe them kindness, because kindness without boundaries is self-destruction. You owe them nothing. And in that nothing, you gain everything. Freedom, clarity, self-mastery, and peace. They thought your survival was meaningless. That waking up each day, breathing, existing, was just a sign you were broken, a ghost dragging yourself through life. But they were wrong. Survival is not weakness. Survival is defiance. Survival is rebellion. Think about it. That quiet confidence, radiating without words, is more powerful than any speech. It is what makes them whisper in regret. What makes them look away when your name is mentioned. This is the high-performance mindset. Thriving means channeling every ounce of your energy, not into revenge, not into proving yourself to anyone, but into self-mastery, into your health, your craft, your purpose, and into the relationships truly worthy of your loyalty. You build a life so vast, so expansive, that their memory becomes microscopic in comparison. So let them watch. Let them hear of your progress, your growth, your strength. Every time they see you rise, they will feel it. The sting of regret, the crushing weight of failure. But you won't even notice, because thriving beyond them means they are no longer the center of your story. You are. Remember this. The greatest victory is not in destroying them. It is in living so fully, so freely, that they fade into irrelevance. They once tried to define you by pain, but you, through discipline and resilience, have defined yourself by thriving. And that, my friend, is a triumph no one can take away. They thought you were gone. They thought your silence meant defeat, that your absence meant irrelevance. But they were wrong. Silence is not disappearance. Absence is not weakness. Your silence became presence. Your absence became power. You did not vanish. You transformed into the one thing they can never outrun. A ghost. And you know something about ghosts? They don't scream. They don't fight. They don't beg for attention. They simply exist, quietly, relentlessly, everywhere. That's what you've become in their story, a living ghost that reminds them of everything they did, every choice they made, every scar they carved into you. And here lies the torment. Ghosts never leave. Regret itself is the haunting. It follows them into life's quietest moments, into the stillness of night, when masks fall away, when there's no one left to impress. That is when your shadow appears. They will see your face in the dark corners of memory. They will hear your voice in the silence they cannot bear. They will feel your presence in every reminder of their failure. You are not chasing them. It is their own conscience chasing them. The Stoics understood the power of absence. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best way of avenging yourself is not to become like the wrongdoer." That wisdom lives in you now. You don't have to fight them, argue with them, or expose them. By refusing to become them, you became something greater. And that greatness is the ghost that will haunt them forever. Think about it. Predators thrive on reaction. They crave your rage. They crave your tears. They want proof that you are still trapped in their orbit. But silence terrifies them. Because silence means you are no longer playing their game. It means you've slipped beyond their grasp. It means you now exist in a dimension they cannot reach, a place of inner peace, firm boundaries, and unshakable self-mastery. Psychologists call this the mirror effect. When people see you standing tall, unbroken, they are forced to confront themselves. And what reflects back is not your pain, but their weakness. That reflection burns. It presses down on their chest like the weight of regret. And they cannot escape it, because you are no longer a participant in their story. You have written your own. You are the consequence. This is the paradox of haunting. You don't need to be there to be present. Every time they hear your name, every time they witness someone thriving when they once expected destruction, every time they catch even a glimpse of the life you've built, they feel the ghost. You have become the living reminder of what they lost, what they destroyed, what they can never reclaim. But here lies the brilliance of Stoic wisdom. You do not haunt them on purpose. You don't waste your energy plotting their misery. You live, you thrive, you keep walking forward, and life itself delivers the punishment. The haunting is not your work, it is theirs. Their own conscience is the architect of their torment. You are simply the proof. Seneca once said, "A good character once established is not easily overthrown. That is your ghost, the character you forged in fire. The resilience you earned in silence, they cannot erase it. They cannot escape it. And the harder they try to forget, the deeper the memory cuts." Understand this. Being a ghost does not mean you are trapped in the past. It means you have risen so far above the battlefield that your very existence becomes the constant reminder of their defeat. You don't need to chase. You don't need to explain. You don't even need to look back. They carry you with them, not as love, not as friendship, but as regret. And unlike anger, regret does not fade. It lingers. It poisons. It corrodes. This is why silence is such a devastating weapon. Every word you withhold becomes an echo louder than any scream. Every door you close becomes a wall they cannot climb. Every boundary you enforce becomes a chain around their neck. You don't raise your voice. You don't raise your fists. You simply exist, and that existence becomes their prison. So let them live with the ghost. Let them carry you in the corners of their mind. Let their own actions haunt them because you are no longer theirs to touch, to break, or to define. You are free. You are thriving. You are untouchable. And they are the ones chained to regret, forever haunted by the ghost of the person they thought they destroyed. Because pain is not just a wound. Pain is a resource. And those who understand this truth hold a power most people will never know. While others waste their suffering on bitterness or self-pity, you learn to turn pain into bricks. Bricks to build an empire no one can tear down. Think back to what they tried to do. They wanted every betrayal to shatter you, every insult to shrink you, every loss to bury you. But instead, you gathered each fragment of pain, carried it, and stacked it. Every scar became a stone. Every sleepless night became mortar. Every tear became the water mixed with your discipline. And now, what was once destruction has become architecture. This is the essence of psychological resilience. It is not denying pain. It is integrating pain, weaving it into the very core of who you are. The Stoics taught this with clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The very obstacles that were meant to stop you have become the foundation on which you now stand. Think of Rome itself, built from battles, forged through fire, strengthened by adversity. It was not comfort that created strength, but struggle. In the same way, your empire was not built on easy days. It was built on the weight you carried when no one was watching. That weight became your training ground. That struggle became your strategy. But here is the crucial distinction. Your empire is not built on revenge. Revenge is fragile, temporary, fueled by the same bitterness that once caged you. Empires built on anger collapse. Empires built on discipline endure. This is why spiritual discipline matters. Without it, pain consumes you. With it, pain constructs you. And this is the psychology of transformation. Researchers call it post-traumatic growth, the process by which trauma does not merely leave scars, but ignites transformation. It is not about returning to who you once were. It is about becoming someone far greater than you ever imagined possible. That is the empire mindset. Pain did not restore you to your old self. It elevated you into someone untouchable, sharper, stronger, more resilient. Your empire is built on boundaries. Once you allowed anyone to step into your world, to take from you, to break you, to walk away. But now, every boundary you set has become another wall of your fortress. That is emotional intelligence in action. The ability to protect your energy, to direct your focus, to refuse entry to those unworthy of your presence. And empires are not just defensive, they expand. Your pain has become fuel for growth in your health, your craft, your purpose, and your relationships. Every time you invest energy into self-mastery rather than retaliation, you are adding another tower, another gate, another layer of strength. Until one day, the life you've built is so vast, so powerful, that the ones who tried to destroy you can no longer even see the top. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Stop wasting energy explaining yourself to those who never deserved you. Stop justifying your silence, your distance, your growth. Build relentlessly. Build with the focus of someone who has nothing left to lose and everything left to gain. And here is the irony. The very people who believed they buried you will one day look at your empire and face the truth. They were not your destroyers. They were your architects. Every cruel word they spoke, every betrayal they inflicted, every ounce of pain they forced on you, all of it was material. They handed you the bricks without realizing it. And you built something so immense it makes them look small. This is the high-performance mindset. Taking what others meant for harm and turning it into the very system that propels you forward. It is not luck. It is not chance. It is discipline. It is clarity. It is the refusal to waste pain. So let your life become the empire they cannot ignore. Let your silence be the throne they can never sit upon. Let your thriving be the monument they see from afar, knowing they contributed to its creation, but will never have a place in its glory. Because in the end, pain was never the conclusion. Pain was the blueprint. And you were the builder. They gave you ruins, but you created a kingdom. They gave you ashes, but you forged fire. They gave you nothing, but you built everything. That is what it means to build an empire out of pain. And that empire will stand long after their regret has consumed them. They expected you to collapse. They expected you to stay bitter, trapped in the endless cycle of anger and blame. They thought leaving you with nothing would reduce you to nothing, but they underestimated you, because the greatest revenge is not shouting, not fighting, not trying to prove your worth to them. The greatest revenge is living well, and living well is not about luxury. It is not about flaunting wealth to make them jealous. No. Living well is cultivating a life so grounded in peace, in self-worth, and in emotional intelligence that their memory no longer dictates your direction. It is about building routines, relationships, and resilience that make you untouchable. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Do you see the power in that? They live small lives, bitter, jealous, manipulative. But you live differently, you rise above. You refuse to waste your energy becoming what you despise, and in that refusal, you reveal their weakness. Remember this: anger makes you reactive. Hatred chains you to the past, but living well sets you free. Free from their opinions, free from their shadows, free from their control. That freedom cuts deeper than any blade, because while they remain trapped in the same cycles, you have already moved on. You have outgrown them. You have built a future beyond their imagination. Psychology calls this self-actualization, the highest state of human growth. It is the place where you are no longer driven to prove yourself to others, but to fulfill your own purpose. Living well means you no longer measure your worth by their approval or attention. You measure it by the clarity of your mind, the strength of your discipline, and the peace of your soul. Picture this. One day, they see you. Not bitter, not broken, but radiant. Your life is steady. Your relationships are healthy. Your mind is sharp. Your presence is calm. You are no longer the person they once tormented. You are transformed. And that transformation is louder than any confrontation. They expected your destruction. But what they witness instead is your evolution. And that undeniable reality is a punishment sharper than any words could ever deliver. This is what it means to embrace the high-performance mindset, to live not in reaction, but in creation, to stop wasting energy explaining or defending, to start using that energy to build, to thrive, to master yourself, your silence, your boundaries, your discipline. These are not signs of defeat. They are the architecture of a life so well lived that no one can touch it. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That is the essence of living well. You are no longer defined by their cruelty. You are defined by your choices. The choice to protect your energy. The choice to build your empire. The choice to cultivate peace rather than chaos. And here is the irony. When you live well, you don't even notice their regret. You don't have to, because regret is their prison, not yours. You are too busy thriving, too busy living with intention, too busy enjoying the life you built from ashes. Their pain is irrelevant. Their downfall is background noise. Their opinion is weightless. Living well is the ultimate revenge because it flips the script. Instead of you carrying the burden of what they did, they carry the burden of what they lost. Instead of you being haunted by the past, they are haunted by the sight of your present. And the higher you rise, the heavier that burden becomes for them. So focus on living. Focus on building. Focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Not for them, but for you. Because nothing suffocates an enemy more than watching the person they tried to destroy live a life they can never touch. Let your calm be louder than their chaos. Let your boundaries be stronger than their manipulation. Let your thriving shine brighter than their darkness. Because in the end, living well is not just revenge. It is liberation. And liberation is the one thing they will never have. Because regret will never set them free, but you are already free. And freedom is your power. To live fully is the sweetest victory of all. There comes a moment when pain no longer defines you. When scars no longer haunt you. When silence is no longer heavy. It is powerful. That moment is now. You are no longer the broken, desperate version of yourself they thought they abandoned. You have become something else. Sharper, stronger, untouchable. But untouchable does not mean you never feel. It does not mean life stops testing you. It means you are no longer controlled by external storms. The world can rage. People can betray. Cruelty can strike. Yet your center remains unshaken. This is the essence of inner peace and self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This wisdom is the core of being untouchable. They may gossip, they may slander, they may plot, but none of it reaches your soul because you no longer grant them entry. They can knock at the gates of your mind, but the gates remain closed. That is the power of psychological boundaries. Think of a mountain. The winds may howl, the storms may strike, lightning may crash upon its surface, but the mountain stands, immovable, steadfast, untouchable. That is what you have become. They hurled storms at you, but instead of crumbling, you rooted deeper. You became the mountain. Psychology calls this a resilient self-identity, when your sense of worth no longer depends on someone else's approval, apology, or attention. You no longer live in reaction. You live in creation, and that shift terrifies them, because the version of you they once controlled no longer exists. You are beyond their reach, beyond their manipulation, beyond their games. Of course, they will try. They always do. They will whisper apologies. They will shed crocodile tears. They will beg for another chance, or accuse you of being heartless. But you see through it now. You've learned to read behind the mask, to hear the motives beneath the words. And because of that, their tactics fall flat. They no longer hold power. Their weapons no longer pierce. Their games no longer matter. You are untouchable. And here's the paradox. Being untouchable is not about building walls of bitterness. It is about laying foundations of clarity. You do not hate them. You do not waste energy despising them. You simply refuse to let them in. That is the brilliance of emotional intelligence. Choosing calm over chaos, discipline over drama, clarity over confusion. Picture this. They see you now, standing tall, calm, radiant with quiet confidence. You are no longer chasing, no longer explaining, no longer bending. You are simply being. And that being is more powerful than any words you could ever say. They see it in your eyes, in your posture, in the life you've built. That sight alone is the wound they will carry, because it forces them to face the truth. They did not break you. They built you. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And now you are free. Free from their grip, free from their narrative, free from their regret. And this freedom makes you untouchable. This is the high-performance mindset at its peak. Not merely surviving, not merely thriving, but transcending. When you are untouchable, you live with such discipline, such spiritual grounding, that you are no longer swayed by praise or blame, by cruelty or flattery. You stand in your own truth, and that truth is immovable. They thought you were a victim, but you are a force. They thought you were fragile, but you are a fortress. They thought you were finished, but you are only beginning. And here's the beauty. You don't need to prove you are untouchable. Your life proves it. Your calm proves it. Your silence proves it. Your thriving proves it. You simply exist. And your very existence is undeniable evidence that you are beyond their reach. So let them whisper. Let them regret. Let them choke on the weight of their choices. You don't need to lift a finger. You are already untouchable. And that transformation, that mastery, that peace, this is the victory they can never take from you. Because in the end, pain was never your prison. It was your forge. And from that forge you emerged, not bitter, not broken, but unshakable, unbending, untouchable. They thought they were writing your ending, but pain was never the end. It was the beginning. What they handed you as chains, you turned into keys. What they left as scars, you forged into armor. What they thought would silence you became the roar of your existence. And now look at you. Untouchable, calm, disciplined, thriving. You are no longer the victim in their story. You are the author of your own. Every page you write from this moment forward is proof that they failed. Here's the truth. You don't need their apology. You don't need their validation. You don't even need their recognition. Because the sweetest revenge was never about them. It was always about you. Living well is the punishment they cannot escape, and the freedom they will never have. So let them drown in regret. Let their conscience be the ghost that never leaves, while they remain chained to the past. Meanwhile, you are building a future so vast, so powerful, so radiant, that their memory becomes nothing more than a fading shadow in the light of your greatness. The Stoics knew this. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. They taught you pain. You turned it into power. They tried to bury you. You became the seed. They thought they broke you. You became unbreakable. Now it is your turn to walk forward, to rise without bitterness, to thrive without apology, to live without fear. Because their regret is not your prison. Their regret is your liberation. If this message resonates with you, don't just listen, live it. Protect your boundaries. Guard your peace. Build your empire. And let your very existence become the storm they can never escape. If you feel this truth, drop a in the comments to declare that you are untouchable. And share this with someone who needs the reminder. Pain is not the end. It is the beginning. Here at Life Through Stoicism, Verizov, we live with discipline and thrive with quiet confidence. Subscribe, join the journey, and never let those who taught you pain stop you from teaching them regret.